They called it the White Man's War. They lied. It began, not with a single gunshot, but with the slow, grinding rhythm of 1,000 wagon wheels creaking north. The Great Trek, a people calling themselves Boers, farmers, turning their backs on the British Cape Colony. They swore never again to bow to London's redcoats or its laws abolishing slavery. Behind them, they left the ocean. Ahead lay kingdoms that had never heard of Europe. Colonial history books often speak of an empty land. This is the first lie. Southern Africa in the early 1800s was a mosaic of power. To the east, the Zulu under King Shaka had forged a disciplined military nation that rivaled the Spartans. To the south, the Xhosa guarded the green hills of the Eastern Cape. Inland, the Sotho, Tswana and Pedi forged iron, mined copper and traded gold, long before London built its first industrial factory. These were not scattered tribes waiting to be conquered, they were civilizations. But the Boers, clutching their Bibles and rifles, poured inland, claiming a divine right to the soil. They believed they were the Israelites entering Canaan, and Canaan had to be cleared. Tension turned to slaughter on the banks of the Encam River, 1838. Andries Pretorius, the Boer commander, made a vow to God, "Give us victory, and we will build you a temple. We will keep this day holy forever." Inside the circle of wagons, 464 Boers. Outside, 12,000 Zulu warriors, the elite of King Dingin's army. The river ran red, not metaphorically. The water became a slurry of blood. 3,000 Zulu warriors fell in a storm of lead. Not one Boer died. They renamed the Encam Blood River. To the Boers, this was not just a military victory. It was proof. Proof that they were the chosen people. Proof that the land north of the Vaal River was theirs by conquest. Two white republics emerged, the Transvaal and the Orange Free State. Their constitutions were explicit, etched in ink and malice. There shall be no equality between black and white in church or state. Dispossession became law. Tswana chiefdoms were driven into the Kalahari thirstlands. The Pedi were forced to pay tribute in labor. King Moshoshu of the Basotho, a master diplomat, fought a desperate game of chess to keep his mountain kingdom, eventually seeking British protection just to survive the Boer onslaught. By 1880, the Boers had their land, they had their freedom, but they were poor, living on dry farms in the middle of nowhere, until a shiny stone changed the fate of the world. First diamonds at Kimberley, then in 1886, gold. Not just some gold, the Witwatersrand, the greatest gold reef in human history. Suddenly, the sleepy religious Boer Republic sat on top of the global economy. London's bankers woke up. Enter Cecil John Rhodes. Rhodes, the Oxford dreamer turned mining tycoon, the man who wanted to paint the map red. He declared, the British flag must fly from the Cape to the Zambezi. Paul Kruger, the Boer president, saw the foreigners flooding his city and replied, every ounce of gold will be weighed in blood, Rhodes plotted. He tried to spark a coup with the disastrous Jameson raid in 1895. It failed, but the gears of war were already turning. By 1899, the gold revenues had done one thing. They allowed the farmers to buy guns, modern German Mausers. October 1899, the British Empire, the superpower of the globe, demanded the Boers submit. The Boers refused. The white man's war had begun. But here is where history often blinks. They called it a white man's war, agreeing that this was a gentleman's fight between Europeans. But on the veld, reality was different. Thousands of Agterryers, black servants and farmhands, rode with the Boer commandos. They loaded the guns. They held the horses. They scouted the terrain. Many fought and died for a republic that refused to recognize their humanity, hoping their loyalty might earn them a scrap of freedom. On the other side, the British armed over 100,000 black and colored men as scouts and guards. It was never a white war. It was a war for the land, fought on the backs of those who had already lost it. For a year, the farmers stunned the empire. They knew the land. They were ghosts in the grass. The British, with their bright red tactics, fell in droves. Embarrassed, London sent Lord Kitchener. He realized he couldn't catch the Boers, so he decided to kill the land that fed them. Total war. Kitchener ordered the veld swept clean. 30,000 farmhouses put to the torch. Millions of sheep and cattle machine-gunned and left to rot, poisoning the air. And for the women and children left behind, the camps. They called them refugee camps. They were death traps. 28,000 white civilians died in British concentration camps. 22,000 of them were children. Measles, typhoid and starvation swept through the tents. Emily Hobhouse, a British woman who exposed the horror, called it murder by neglect. But there was another set of camps that Emily Hobhouse was not allowed to see. Over 115,000 black South Africans, displaced by the scorched earth, were herded into separate enclosures. Here, the rations were smaller. The medical care was non-existent. History didn't just forget these people, it erased them. No registers were kept, no gravestones carved. At least 20,000 black men, women and children perished, buried in unmarked graves, while the politicians in Europe argued over peace treaties. The Boers surrendered, but in defeat they won the ultimate prize. The Treaty of Vereeniging promised that the native question would be ignored until after the Boers were granted self-government. Translation: black people would never vote. The British won the war, but the Boers won the peace. In 1910, they formed the Union of South Africa. 3 years later, the hammer fell, the Natives' Land Act of 1913. With one stroke of a pen, black people, the vast majority of the population, were forbidden to own land outside of 7% of the country. Saul Plaatje, the first secretary of the ANC, traveled the countryside and witnessed the devastation. He wrote, "Awaking on Friday morning, June 20th, 1913, the South African native found himself not actually a slave, but a pariah in the land of his birth." The Zulu royal house lost 80% of its territory overnight. Millions became squatters. The cheap labor force for the gold mines was secured. The foundation of apartheid had been poured in concrete. The Boer Wars did not end in 1902. They simply changed uniforms. The scorched earth of 1901 became the bulldozers of District 6. The concentration camps became the Bantustans. The promise that natives would not vote lasted until 1994. Yet even today, the shadow remains. Look at the deeds. The same families whose rights were secured after the war still hold the vast majority of the arable land. The war for gold and dirt moved from the battlefield to the boardroom. But from the ashes of burned farms and broken treaties, something stubborn grows. A generation that refuses to accept the borders of 1913 as eternal. The high veld wind still carries the creak of wagon wheels, but now it also carries new voices. It began with ox wagons rolling north. It will not end until the land remembers who it belongs to. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, please do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button below. Thanks so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye for now.